Hello guys and welcome back to yet another tutorial within this course. Now in today's video we're going to be focusing on creating a sports style thumbnail. We're going to be using a footballer as the main subject, and the objective with these style of thumbnails is really just to be attractive. Now there are sports thumbnails which focus more on commentary or match highlights, for example, which in that case the objective isn't necessarily to make it as attractive as possible, but where the subject is the main focus, especially for thumbnails where you are just focusing on a specific player's performance, this is the best way to approach this thumbnail style. So we're going to use a good subject image, we're going to make the thumbnail look as attractive as possible, and we're also going to follow standard thumbnail design principles to make for a good thumbnail. Now today you're going to learn how to create glow effects, how to go ahead and create backgrounds, how to add in overlays effectively, and I'll also show you how to create an awesome text effect that you can apply to different thumbnail styles. So with all that being said, let's not waste any more time and get straight into the video. So as always, let's go ahead and create a new file. Let's keep the width to 1920 by 1080, standard thumbnail sizes, resolution 272, 16-bit, and like I've mentioned in previous videos, let's keep the background to 50% grey, because this is going to help us in just spotting any artifacts when we're cutting out our subject. So just click within this color right here. You can make it 50% grey simply by pasting in this hex code. Alternatively, you can also just type in 50 right here next to the B tab over here. Click OK and let's click create. So here is our subject image we'll be using today, Erling Haaland, if you didn't already know. And if you're following along with this tutorial, feel free to use your own subject image, a sports person of your choosing. Now there are a couple of ways we can go ahead and cut this image out. We can use the pen tool, we can use select subject. There are many different ways to cut out a subject, but if you want to get a sharp, crisp cutout, then the pen tool is still king. I do know that AI is improving, but it's not at the level of the pen tool just yet. Even professional sports poster designers say this. The pen tool is still king if you want to get sharp cutouts. So until AI improves, I'm going to stick with the pen tool. It takes more time, but the result is worth it in the end. But of course, if you're following along, feel free to use whatever method you want. Okay, so let's start off with the pen tool, and I don't actually need this whole image to be cut out, only really the top half. So let's make a selection with the marquee tool to something like this. This is pretty much all I need within my image, and I probably won't even use the bottom half of this subject. Okay, so once you have your selection, press Command or Control J, and then let's just delete the background image. Okay, so now we can just focus on this. Let's press P for the pen tool and zoom in to our subject. And when you're cutting out your images, make sure to start within the actual image as opposed to following along the edge of the image, because if you follow along the edge, although you might be thinking you're doing it correctly, you're going to have to go back in and there's a lot of imperfections you're going to have to fix. So as I mentioned, just start off within the actual image. Let me just zoom in closer so you can see. So I'm not actually at the edge, I'm slightly within, maybe 2 to 3 pixels in. And this is just simply to prevent me from having to go back in afterwards and really just refine everything. So as you can see, staying within the image, avoiding the outer edge. Now of course you will have to go back in and refine certain parts, but it just eliminates a lot of refining and speeds up the process. Now if you don't know how to use the pen tool, I would suggest just going ahead and watching a quick tutorial on YouTube and just practicing. That's the best way to improve with this tool. So as you can see, avoiding the edge, just staying within the image and following the shape. Now for this hair region, I think I can actually just remove this. I don't think it will look good in the thumbnail, so let's just remove this part simply by just going ahead and carrying on with our selection. So making our cutout, ignoring this hair as part of the subject. I know this can be quite time consuming, guys, especially when you're used to just using select subject. And you can actually use select subject, but if you want the really crisp look, this is your best bet. And so the same thing applies for the skin. I'm staying within the actual image and trying to avoid the edge. Okay, so once you have your selection, let's now create a layer mask like so, and let's just zoom in to see if we have any imperfections. As you can see, not that many at all, and that's because we just stayed within the image as opposed to following along the outer edge. Now there are some places where we need to refine. As you can see, these darker edges, they just don't look that good. We can refine those simply by just clicking within the layer mask, pressing B for the brush tool, using a hard brush, and we can just paint these out. Now if you want to be hyper accurate with these, what I will do is just use the pen tool like so. Just follow along once more, selecting the imperfections, join a selection like that, press Command or Control Enter, and then with the brush tool and the black color selected, we can just paint this out within the layer mask. Okay, press Command or Control D to deselect, and then you can just go ahead and repeat that step for any remaining imperfections. Okay, so I'm done refining. Let's just drag this in to our original document like so. And because we have a grey background now, any imperfections which still remain will be visible on this background. Okay, so as you can see, we've done a pretty good job. I can't see any imperfections right here. Okay, perfect. Let's now focus on the scale. So right click, convert to smart object, and then we can press Command or Control T, and let's just get the scale of this subject right. I want the subject to be large since this is the main focus of the thumbnail, so make sure we get a large size version of the main subject. And just a quick tip guys, when it comes to selecting your images, your subject for the thumbnail, make sure to find a high quality image and an image with a sports person which has some emotion to his face. For example, if this subject right here had a bland expression, a straight face, then it would be very hard to sell any emotion in the thumbnail, and making it look attractive will not do it justice. So make sure that with these subject images you are selecting, that you're selecting an image which matches with the style of this thumbnail. A serious person, a person smiling, just an expressive emotion. In this case, you can see that he's in an almost arrogant / cocky pose, which works well for the thumbnail style we're creating today. So just a quick tip there guys. Okay, I'm happy with the position of this subject, and now let's focus on the background. So what I'll do is just hide this subject layer, like so. Rename that to subject as well, just to keep organized. Now, of course, I don't want the color of the background to be gray. We're going to focus on adjusting the color. But what I'll do first of all is add in the background image. Now this will be a smoky background, and then we'll adjust the color of it in just a moment. So let's start off with that. Here is the image we'll be using. This is a smoky texture which you can find online, and feel free to experiment and find your own textures or background images, but in this case I'm going to use this one right here. So what I'll do is just drag this into our canvas, and then I will make sure to convert it into a smart object. So right click and convert to smart object. Once you've done that, let's now press Command or Control T and resize this, and then let's just adjust the position of this. So let's just bring it in maybe a bit more, and maybe we can keep the position to something like this. Okay, that looks pretty good. And you may be thinking, how does he know what background image to use? Well, that's all with experimentation. Now, when I make these tutorials, I've already prepared in advance just so I can make the process of learning smooth for you guys, but you will need to experiment and just work with different textures, different patterns, place them in the background and see what works. I've come to find that this image works well, which is why I am using it. So just play around with the position of this texture or any texture that you're using, and the reason why I'm keeping it right here is because I like the introduction of this darker area versus the lighter area up top. So there's a nice range of colors we have going on here, which is really what I was trying to get out of this texture. So as you can see, if I just used this part, it would all just be white, but as opposed to this, it sort of has this gradual dark to light effect. Okay, so that works just fine. Now what I'll do is change the blending mode of this background to overlay, and the reason for that is because I want this texture to overlay on top of a color underneath. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's just unlock this gray layer, and I'm going to adjust the color of this gray layer now. So let's click on adjustment layers and click on solid color, and let's just pick a nice bluish color, a mid-tone-ish blue, maybe something like this, and see how the texture now overlays on top of that color. And you can adjust as you please. So you can use a green color, red color, yellow color. Look at all these options you have simply by just using the blending mode overlay. And they all look really nice. As you can see, we still have that gradual dark to bright effect, and we can adjust the color as we please. So I'm actually going to paste in the hex code that I'm going to go with. As you can see, a nice bluish color, and try to avoid being on the higher, more saturated areas or brighter areas, because that's not going to work well with this blending mode. For example, any red color, if you keep it at the very top right, the brighter areas, as you can see, they just don't work well with the overlay blend mode. But when you use more of these darker tones, you can start to see how the image really blends in well and creates this awesome background for you to go ahead and use. So let's just go ahead and just paste in the hex code once again, click OK, and I'm just going to adjust the opacity of this smoke a slight bit. So bring it down to about 80%. So it's not too harsh. So this is before and this is after. Okay, so that's our background done. Let's go back to the subject, and we are now going to focus on enhancing this subject. So what we can do first of all, before anything else, is let's just use the spot healing brush tool. Let's also rasterize this layer, and let's just have a look and see if there's any imperfections. Yeah, maybe there's a red mark here we can remove. A little mole. Just have a look on the subject's face and see if you can remove any little imperfections. So any spots, Any blemishes, this would be a good time to remove those. Yep, not too many on this subject. Yep, perfect. Okay, now we can move on to Camera Raw Filter, which is our next phase of enhancing this subject. So what I'll do now is just right click, convert back to a smart object, and let's go to Filter and Camera Raw Filter. Let's go to the light section, and I think we can adjust the shadows. So let's just adjust the shadows to something like -27. So this is before and this is after, just enhancing these shadows and bringing them out a bit more. Let's go into color. And I think we can just reduce the saturation a slight bit. Yeah, so this is before, this is after. Yeah, just to lower the saturation. Since we're trying to immerse this subject into the background, we don't want too much saturation on the subject's face. Okay, let's move into effects. Let's increase the texture. Let's take this up to +20. Let's also increase sound clarity. So let's take this to +5. Yep, let's go into detail. Increase the sharpening to, let's say, +10, and we can also remove some grainy texture from the subject by just adding a bit of noise reduction. So let's just take this to 10 as well. Okay, and we can click OK. So that's our first base level layer of enhancing. If you look at the before and after, yep, you can see that there's a bit of enhancement to this subject. Now let's carry on with the enhancing with the dodge and burn effect. So what we're going to do, as always, is go ahead and create 2 curves layers. So just create one and duplicate by pressing Command or Control J, and we are just going to clip both of these to the subject layer. Let's now rename this one to highlights and this one to shadows. And let's click on the highlights curves layer and increase the highlights, and do the same for the shadows, increase the shadows. Okay, let's now invert both of the layer masks. So press Command or Control I within each layer mask, and now we can begin our first stage of the dodge and burn effect. So what we can do, so let's now press B for the brush tool, and we are going to use the white color. Make sure you have the flow set to about 10%, and let's now focus on the subject's face. So typically what I like to do is just enhance areas which are bright already. So we can do that just simply by going over the regions which already have some existing light and enhancing them. Okay, so let's just do it, but not too much. Be subtle with this, and also make sure to use a soft rounded brush for this step. So I'm going to undo those first few, and let's start again. Just going over the highlights already existing on the subject's face. Yep, just getting all these highlights, as you can see. Let's do the eyes as well. Make them pop. Yep, looking good. And let's also do the creases on this jersey, because why not? It helps to increase the contrast. So let's just go over the brighter areas of the creases. And it's these little subtle details which make all the difference in the end, so don't skip out on this step. Yep, looking good. Okay, now that's done, let's now move on to the shadows and just do the exact same thing. So let's just start off with the face and go over the general darker areas. So let's just darken the bottom or the roots of his hair. Maybe we can bring out his eyebrows a lot more because they aren't too visible. Yeah, much better. And spend your time with this step. No need to rush. All the details matter, and in the end, it makes for a good thumbnail. So do not rush this step. Okay, we're getting his jawline, which is sort of chiseling it in a way. So adding some shadows to make his jawline more prominent. Under the neck as well. And already, as you can see, if I just do the before and after, you can see there's a lot of difference already happening in the face, sort of shaping the face a lot more and increasing the contrast. Okay. And I'm going to do a second version of both the highlights and shadows, more so for the finer areas, where I just want to enhance those little details to really make the subject's face pop. So what I'll do is I'm going to duplicate the highlights layer. I'm going to now clip that to the subject as well and rename this one to highlights edges. Yeah, let's then click within the layer mask, press Command or Control A to select the whole canvas, and we can press backspace now to clear that layer mask, meaning it's now ready, a blank canvas ready for us to add in some highlights. Okay, so let's now zoom in to the subject. And for this highlights edges layer, what I'll do is just focus on the little areas and just boost some of the details. So these little areas where we can boost the highlights a bit more than what we did on the previous layer. This is really going to help to make the subject pop. Maybe we can just do a bit more on the eyes, the white part of the eye. The eyelids. The outer part of the nostril. Yeah, looking nice. This jawline, as you can see, a very fine little white highlight we can enhance even more. Now the reason I'm doing this on a separate layer is just to keep things organized. You can always just increase the flow or just lower the size of your brush and go over these parts on the same layer. But just for the sake of keeping organized, I like to do these on separate layers, but there's no harm in doing it either way. I just like to keep organized, guys, on the edge. And so the more time you spend, especially with the edges, the highlights edges, typically the result will be better, in my opinion. That's just from experience. So don't rush this step. And you can always inverse the color if you want to fade some stuff out, which you think you've done an excessive job with. Like right here, and maybe right here on the edges, we can just lower down the effect. Okay, let's zoom out, have a look. Yeah, maybe we can just lower down the effect over here. Yeah, not too bad at all. Okay, let's now do the same thing for the shadows. So duplicate the shadows curves layer. Let's clip that to the subject and click within the layer mask, Command or Control A, and press backspace and make sure to just invert this layer mask so that the layer mask is black, ready to paint in with the white color. Okay, let's then just rename this to shadows edges. And let's just do the same thing now. So click within the layer mask and focus on the little edges. So you can see the mouth. Very good opportunity just to enhance that and bring out the shape of it since it's not so prominent in this particular image. And collectively, all these little adjustments make a lot of difference in the detail of the subject's face. And I'll show you exactly what I mean afterwards. I'll do a before and after, and you'll definitely see a difference. It doesn't look like it right now, but just wait a second and you will see. Now, a lot of YouTubers wouldn't go this far, especially if you're looking on any YouTube tutorials online. They will just do a simple dodge and burn effect, but wouldn't go to the next step further, which is what I'm doing right here. So definitely take note and try and apply this to your workflow. I guess you could call this Dodge and Burn 2.0. Little nickname, guys. Yep, that looks pretty good to me. Yeah, really nice. Okay, now if I just zoom out, here is before, all of our adjustments, and here is after. So you can see the difference in the subject's face. It's night and day. It's a completely different face. And so if I toggle everything off once again, just really quickly, here is our initial dodge and burn effect right here. And then when we added in those extra additions, you can see that some parts of the face have become more prominent, or you can see them a bit clearer. As you can see with these shadows edges, that really brought out the detail in his mouth and on the wrinkles and the eyelids. Okay, now it's time to color grade our subject. Now, a lot of people actually get this wrong, and so I think this is worth explaining. Now, of course, we have a background, a blue background. We're going to add some thunder in and create the background environment as if he's in a thunderstorm. The saturation of his face, the tone of his face, doesn't look as if he belongs within this environment. Now, this isn't necessarily a photo manipulation piece, but what we are trying to do here is just match the tones of the subject with the background so that the final result looks like it all merges well together. So what we will do first of all is we're going to use a color balance adjustment layer on this subject, and that's really primarily going to be focusing on adjusting the skin tone of the subject. So what we can do is go ahead and select the subject, go ahead and click on adjustment layers and click on a color balance adjustment layer right here. Perfect. And let's now adjust these tones. Now, the objective here is to add a bluish tone to the subject's face. As you can see right now, it's quite orange and golden. We need to move it more in the bluish range. So just to explain how color balance works, you have 3 tabs right here: shadows, midtones, and highlights. Now, depending on what tab you select, you'll be adjusting those specific things on the subject. So if we select midtones, then you're really just focusing on the general skin tone of the subject. So if we just adjust any of the sliders, as you can see, the general skin tone is adjusted. Now, if we move into shadows, then if we adjust the colors, you can see it's more so just targeting the darker areas, the shadows on the subject. And of course, for the highlights, the spotlights on his face. Those are primarily adjusted when we adjust the colors of the highlights. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and adjust the color of the subject and give him a bluish tint. Let's start off with the midtones, so let's adjust and see what we can do. I think I'm going to actually add a bit of red in to the face initially, and then add some blues in as well for the midtones. So +3 and +3. So adding in some red and blue. Let's go into shadows. Let's adjust the cyans. So let's add in some cyans, so -12. Let's add in some magentas, so -7. And we can add in some blues, so +8. Yeah, looks pretty good. Let's go into highlights and adjust the cyans. Let's keep this to about -10. Adjust the magentas. Nope, let's just avoid the magentas for the highlights and add some blues in. Yeah, now let's just zoom in, have a look. So this is before and this is after. Yeah, this is looking much better. Now I also want to do the same thing for the jersey specifically, so I just want to adjust the color of the jersey, and the best way and most quickest way of doing this is simply to use selective color. So let's select our subject, go to adjustment layers and click on selective color like so, and just make sure that's clipped to the subjects. Make sure to be in cyans because we are targeting the cyans primarily, and let's just adjust. So I want to make this more brighter, the color of the jersey. So let's just brighten the cyans, maybe to -27. Let's see with the magentas. Yeah, let's do -15. Let's adjust the magentas. Yeah, -10. Let's adjust the yellows. We can do -10 for that as well. And let's adjust the blacks, which just affects the darkness or brightness of the jersey. Let's do -5. Actually, in saying that, let's just adjust the blacks to, let's say, +2. Yeah, we don't want things to be overly bright since, of course, if you look at the bottom here in the background, we have this dark area. So we don't want things to be overly bright, just to match the ambient lighting of the background. Now, as you can see, we've adjusted the color of the jersey, and I think this looks much better. So this is before, and this is after. So a more brighter slash cyanish color to the jersey, before and after. Moving on to the glow effects, let's now focus on the main subject and add some glow to this subject. So double click on the subject layer and let's add an outer glow. So click on outer glow, and here are the settings to follow. So as you can see, we have the blending mode set to linear dodge add. The color I selected was from his jersey right here, but you can feel free to choose any color that you want. A white would even do the trick, but I'm sticking with the color theme, so a light blue will do the trick. Click OK, and as you can see, I've kept the opacity quite low and the size is quite high, so 73 pixels for the size. So you can increase this even more, but it becomes too faint when you do that, so keep it to about 73 and you can play with the opacity. Now I don't increase the opacity to something like this because it looks quite tacky and it looks a bit amateurish, so I prefer to keep it subtle. This is the first layer of glow we're adding on to the subject. So we've added in some outer glow to the subject. Now we're going to focus on painting in some rim lights. For me, this is a two-step process where the first step will be just painting in some soft light on the subject, and then I'll go in afterwards on a separate layer and paint in some rim lights. If you don't know what rim lights are, essentially I can show you by just creating a new layer. And let's just use the red brush to illustrate my point. So say there's a source of light right here, shining light, and we have a subject right here. Okay, makes sense so far? I hope so. Okay, so the light is shining on to the subject. Now a rim light basically is where the light hits this subject and the outer edge of the subject right here. Maybe I can illustrate this in a different color. The outer edge of the subject right here will have a light existing on the subject. That's a rim light. Light shining on an object and the outer edge of the object having some light to signify that there's light being shined upon it. Okay, hope that makes sense. We'll paint in some soft light, which is basically just a base level layer of light, which is not so harsh and is quite spread out. Okay, so for example, if this was a rim light, a very thin strip, then the soft light would have less strength, but would be much larger in comparison, right? So we have some base level of light, and then we come in with a rim light at the edge. I hope that makes sense. That's my very tacky way of explaining it. Okay, so let's just remove that and begin the process. Okay, so let's start off by selecting the subject layer, and we are going to go to adjustment layers and select solid color. Okay, once you've done that, let's now select a light blue for the moment. Click OK, and then let's adjust the blending mode to screen. Once you've done that, let's now invert this layer mask. So press Command or Control I within the layer mask to invert it. And for the soft light, so let's just rename this to soft light, since that's what we're going to focus on first. We are going to keep the flow to about 20%. So even less than 30, we'll keep it to about 20%. Okay, now press B for the brush tool. Click within your layer mask, and now with a soft brush and the white color selected, we're going to start painting in some soft light. So just watch what I'm doing. I'm painting in some light over the subject around the edges, just adding a base level layer of light. And you can always go back in and remove parts which you don't like. But right now I'm just focusing on adding a bit of light to the subject. And you want this to be subtle, guys. It shouldn't be strong. You just want a little bit of light over the subject. Okay, so I would consider this soft light just around the edges, and we can go back in now, press B for the brush tool and use the inverse color to remove the parts we don't like. So I don't like how it's affected the ear, so I'm going to remove that using the inverse color black to remove what we've just painted in. I like how it is on the neck and around the outer jersey. Okay, so that was simply the first step. So if I just toggle between before and after, this is before and this is after. Some soft light added in. Okay, let's zoom back in. And now let's focus on some rim lights. So what I'll do is just simply duplicate this layer. Then let's clip it to the subject. Then I'll click within the layer mask, press Command or Control A to select everything and press backspace. Now just make sure to invert the layer mask back to black. So Command or Control I within the layer mask. Let's press Command or Control D to deselect and rename this one to rim light. And for rim lights, I like to increase the color a slight bit from the soft light and just make it slightly brighter. Maybe to something like this. So slightly brighter than the soft light. Okay, and we'll go back in now with the brush tool and start painting in with a much smaller brush this time round, and we'll increase the flow to something like 80%. Okay, change the color to white, and now let's start painting around the edges. As you can see, I'm really just focusing on the outer edge for this step. Let's zoom in to the neck, and we want to be subtle here, so very subtle. And just paint some out if you've made any mistakes. Okay, let's do the same on this side of his neck. And of course around the jersey. Just following along the edge of the subject. And now as you can see, the glow effect is starting to come to life with the outer glow first of all, then the soft light, and now the rim light. Okay, let's zoom out. As you can see, the glow is starting to build up around the edge of the subject. Now let's go to the head. I think we can add some on the side of his head right here. Yeah, let's add some right here as well. Now, if you're wondering why I know or how I know where to actually paint the light, that is something you're going to figure out with practice. The more you practice painting in light, observing light shining on an object and just seeing how light reflects on that object, or even just looking at other people's artwork and seeing how they've painted in light to gain an understanding of how they've painted it in. The more you observe and then practice it, the better you will get and you'll start to know where to paint lines in. But I'm not going to be able to tell you that in a couple of seconds, guys, unfortunately. It's just one of those things that comes with practice. Okay, so I like that rim light there. Let's try and add one on the top corner right here. Yep, a much more prominent one, because why not? Yeah, looking really nice, really nice. Okay, this is looking good. Yeah. Yeah, this is looking really nice, guys. What I think we can do for the rim lights is just decrease the opacity to maybe 80%. So this is before and this is after. Yeah, that's much better. Now, an additional step that I would like to take, which just takes things a step further, is I want to duplicate one of these rim light layers once again. So just duplicate this one. Any of the two, doesn't matter. Let's just duplicate the rim light layer. And what I'll do is just press Command or Control A, backspace to clear the canvas. Make sure you're selected within your layer mask. Let's press B for the brush tool now. Have the white color selected, have a soft brush, and we're going to take the flow all the way down to 2. And what I'm going to simply do is add in some blue tint to the face within the actual image. Of course, we targeted the outer edges of this image, but inside we haven't really adjusted the colors. So what we can do is just simply with a low flow, go over some areas, some highlights, some midtones, just adding a nice blue tint all over. Try to avoid the eyes because that will decrease the detail. As you can see, it sort of creates this hazy effect, so just be careful of that. But yeah, as you can see, just adding a slight blue tint helps to blend the subject into the background a bit better, in a good way. Okay, this is looking much better. And if I toggle between before and after, you can see the results. So this is before and this is after. So a nice blue tint that we've added just within the regions we didn't target earlier. We're making good progress. Let's now just focus on the text, and we'll come back afterwards and add in any overlays and the lightning at the end. So let's just focus on the text first. So I'm going to press T for the type tool, and the font we are using today is Nexar Heavy. I'm going to click on the canvas and I'm going to type in 20 right here and just increase the size of this. Okay, so let's just increase the size to something like this for now. We can adjust the scale in just a moment. Yeah, something like this. And then let's create a duplicate of this layer. So just hold down Alt or Option and Shift and drag to keep it on the same line. Okay, let's also at this point probably bring in some rulers to give us a guideline to follow. So Command or Control R, and we can just place it at the baseline of the text. That way we can just make sure that everything is level. Okay, so let's just move this one more to the right a bit. Yeah, to something like this, and let's just adjust this to 2026. Now it's 2025 as of the time of this recording, but by the time you're watching this course, it'll be 2026. So I'm just staying ahead of the curve, guys. Okay, so once we have both of our text layers, then it's just about adjusting the scale. So what I'll do is I'll spend some time adjusting the sizes of both of these text layers until I'm happy with the final result. I'd rather do that and not waste your time, so I'll just skip this part and I'll be right back when I've reached the desired result. As you can see, I've adjusted the scale of both of my text layers. Now if I just toggle back on the rulers, you can also see that I've kept it level, and this is very important, guys. Make sure everything is level, otherwise it will just look funny. Okay, so let's just toggle these back off, Command or Control semicolon to do that. And now guys, we need to remove the fill from these text layers. We only want the stroke of this text to be visible, and so the way we can do this is by creating a shape with both of these text layers. First of all, we need to do this, otherwise this will not work. So what I'll do is I'll right click on our first text layer, number 20, and I'm going to convert it into a shape. I'll do the same for this one. Right click, convert to shape, and let's start off with number 20. Press P for the pen tool, and what I'll do from here is go to the tab right here and select shape. Once you've done that, it now gives you more options to adjust. So we'll just select fill and cancel the fill out. Now it disappears, not to worry. Let's now add a stroke. So let's just select a white colored stroke and increase the pixels to 10 pixels. As you can see, nice and easy. Let's now do the same thing for 26. So just press P for the pen tool. It's already set to shape. That's because we've done it for this one. And let's just do the same thing. Cancel out the fill. Add a stroke with a white color and adjust the pixels to 10. And as you can see now, we've removed the fill and we are left with only the stroke. So we have our stroke, we've removed the fill, but now we need to go ahead and add the glow effects to the text. So all we need to do, very simply, is just double click on our text layers and add an outer glow. So here are the settings I'm going for: linear dodge add as the blend mode, and I'm using a blue color. Now, of course, you can see the theme that we're going for today is using the color blue, and in graphic design, this is actually called a monochromatic color scheme. What that means is that you're using the same color, just different shades of it. So as you can see, we have a brighter blue here. We have the background, which is still blue, but just a darker version of it. And of course, the jersey at a different brightness level, all of which are the same color, just different shades of the same color. So we've created this almost neon glow effect on the text. And the way to do this is simply by starting off with the color white for the text. So the stroke has to be white, and then you can just go in and adjust with any color that you want to adjust the neon glow effect to the color of your choosing. Okay, so just go ahead and do the same thing for the other text layer. And now moving on to the next step, which is adding some gradient fill into both of our text layers. This just elevates the overall look of the text because right now it does look quite bland. Although there's a glow effect, we could really boost the attractiveness of this. So let's start off with number 20. All we need to do, first of all, is just press Command or Control and click within the layer. So we've made a selection of this layer. Once you've done that, let's now go to the gradient tool right here. Once you've selected your black and white gradient, you can simply do that by just selecting right here. Basically just add your gradient in, and then you can go in and adjust the options. And then you have these two bars. Now the top bar right here just controls the colors. So we want to have a nice bluish color. So what I'll do is select a nice blue color, maybe something like this. Just select a blue from right here, and I don't want any color to be visible on this side. So we need to go to opacity controls and change this black to white. So just simply reduce the opacity all the way down to 0. And what that basically means now is that this blue side will be visible, as you can see right here, and it's now transparent on this right hand side, meaning that now if we just add in our gradient, it's only visible at the bottom and the top has no opacity, which is why it has a transparent effect. Okay, so let's start off. Okay, and then it's just a matter of adding it in, and hold down Shift if you want to keep it on a straight parallel line, and just add as much glow as you want. As you can see, guys, fairly simple. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Let's keep it to something like this. Maybe we can adjust the color, see if we can get a better, more attractive color. Always worth experimenting, guys. So let's just see if we can get a nice color here. I think the cyan is pretty good. I'm just exploring the options we have here. Okay, I think the cyan is probably the best approach here. But feel free to experiment as much as you want and spend as much time as you need on this step. Okay, so I'm just going to keep it as that. And now let's bring back our rulers. So press Command or Control semicolon to toggle the visibility back on. And what I'll do now is press G once again. And now this gives you a view of the gradient we've added in. So now when I go back to number 26, let's go to number 26 and just press Command or Control and click on the layer to make a selection of it. And we do the same exact thing. Just add a gradient, a parallel gradient like so. All you need to do now is just simply select the previous gradient and you can have a look at the position, how you've positioned it so that you get it equal. You can see the position of where you've placed the gradient points and just make sure it matches on both sides. So just toggle between the two to get the same result. This one can be brought up a slight bit, This one can be brought up as well, a slight bit. As you can see, guys, so that's all we needed to do. Now we can just toggle off the rulers. And now, as you can see, we've added in some gradient fill only to the bottom parts of these two text layers. Now I'm just going to go ahead and adjust the colors, and I'll be right back in just a moment with my desired result. Yep, so I've just made a couple of adjustments. I've adjusted the color of the gradient, and I can provide you with the hex code for that. So I found a nice blue shade to use. This looks much better. And if I toggle back on the gradient tool, you can see that I've kind of just adjusted the position a slight bit. Now I'll give you guys a tip. Just toggle back on your rulers, and you can actually use your guides as a reference point. For example, just press G to bring back the gradient, and now with the rulers you can just simply adjust the position of the ruler to the end of this point, right? And the reason you would do that is simply because now if we select the other text layer, we can now just see if things are matching on both sides. So because we create a little guide, we can now just follow that same line and just make sure it's identical on both sides. As you can see, it's pretty much identical. So we've done our job here. Okay, let's now just hide our rulers. And the final adjustment I made was I just decreased the size of the stroke a slight bit. So to do that, all you need to do is just click on your text layer, press P for the pen tool, and now you can just adjust the stroke. As you can see here, I've adjusted it to 8. Previously, it was 10 pixels. And I think this just looks slightly more better. So keep it at 8 pixels. Now the only thing I don't like is this sort of hazy effect that's appearing on the text. It sort of looks watered down, and so what I think we can do is go back into the gradient section, and as you can see we have the color white here, which I think is what the issue is. So if we just select this color and source a dark blue, I think this just looks better. So let's just copy that hex code and just paste it onto this side as well. So click on 26 and adjust this color as well. So paste that in on both sides. To me, this just looks better. You get some of the background in the text whilst also having that fill still existing at the bottom of the text. But as you can see, I changed my mind, and if you think you can get a better result, take that opportunity to improve your work. So we've sorted out our text. Let's now focus on adding in some lightning to the subject and in the background as well. This is really going to bring the thumbnail together and really make it look attractive. So let's begin with that. Now here I have the image we are going to be using, and we need to make a selection of just the lightning without getting any of the clouds and these rocks involved. So what we can do, the best way to go about it is use the lasso tool, and let's just make our selection, making sure just to get that main lightning strike in the center in our selection. Okay, to something like this. As you can see, we've got this main lightning strike within our selection, and I'll press Command or Control J to copy that selection. Now let's just drag this into our document like so. Click yes. And as you can see, it's quite a large image, so we need to scale it down. So what I'll do before that is just right click, convert to smart object, and now let's just scale this down to size. Maybe to something like this. Okay, let's just keep it to something like this. Yeah, this looks pretty good in my opinion. And of course we need to remove the background. So as you can see, we have the sky as the background. We need to remove that, and the best way to approach this is by first adjusting the blending mode. So let's go to blending modes, adjust the blending mode to screen, and as you can see that starts to have an effect, but we need to remove the background completely. So what we will need to do after doing that is press Command or Control L, and that will bring up levels. So within levels, let's just adjust the shadows, moving the slider to the right, and as you can see that gradually removes the background. Let's not take it all the way to the end because that's not going to look good. For example, that looks terrible. So let's keep it maybe to something like this for now, and let's adjust the midtones as well. Drag those to remove some more of the background. So just adjust some of the midtones. Maybe we'll keep it to something like this for just a moment. like so. Okay, let's click OK. And because we've converted this layer into a smart object, we now have the option to toggle this on and off as we please. So we can always go back in and make some more adjustments if need be. Now what I'll do to refine this is use a mask. So select mask, and now let's just paint out the parts of the background and also these little stems of lightning which don't look too attractive. Okay, so make sure to use the black color when you're doing this and have your flow set to 100 and use a soft brush. Let's go ahead and start painting out. And make sure to decrease the size of your brush the closer you get to the main lightning, so that you don't end up fading out the lightning by mistake. So as you can see, just staying around the actual main lightning, making sure not to remove that, and just removing the excess parts of the background. I could speed this part up, but I figured you guys wanted to see the process, so I'll keep it in. And hopefully you guys can learn something just in terms of general masking. Of course, the benefits with masking is that we can undo any of the things we do by mistake. You can just simply paint with the inverse color to bring parts back if you've painted them out. Or you could just use undo, Command or Control Z, a standard Photoshop shortcut, just to undo any mistakes. So as you can see, just gradually trying to remove the background. And also removing any of these stems which don't look too good. And what I would probably do at this stage is just go back into levels and adjust a slight bit more. So just slide a bit more to remove the extra parts of the background. Okay, let's keep it to this for now. What I then think I will do is go ahead and duplicate this layer. So press Command or Control J to duplicate, and that just increases the intensity of the thunder. Okay, once you've done that, let's merge these two together, and let's just change the blending mode back to screen. Okay, and then I'll just right click, convert to smart object, and then press Command or Control L to bring back levels. And let's try and remove some more of the highlights a slight bit. Okay, I think this is pretty good. Let's stop here. Of course, if we continue going on, this lightning will look horrendous. So let's just keep it at that. From here, let's now adjust the color of the lightning. We want this to match with the color of the neon glow text we have right here. So we want to keep things consistent. So let's now just match the color of the lightning. Okay, so what I'll do is go ahead and create a hue and saturation adjustment layer and clip it to the lightning layer. Whilst we're at it, let's just rename this to lightning. And let's now adjust the color of the lightning. So what I'll do is click on colorize and begin just adjusting. The objective here is just to match the color of the lightning with the glow effect we have on the text. So let's just try and do this correctly. So increase the saturation a slight bit. Let's just make this more of a cyanish color. I think that's actually pretty accurate. I think we can adjust the blues a slight bit more and maybe increase the saturation. And we can always adjust afterwards. So let's just keep it at this. Okay, once you've done that, let's now just merge the hue and saturation adjustment layer to the lightning. Press Command or Control E after selecting both of those layers. And then let's just change the blending mode back to screen. Okay, rename this to lightning. And what I'll do now is press Command or Control T, and let's now just place this around the edge of the subject. Now this is an effect I used to do a lot when I was creating poster designs. I just feel like this is a really nice visual effect to have for thumbnail styles like this one. So as you can see, just place it along the edge of the subject and we can remove this excess. But what we will do now is go ahead and just duplicate this layer once more. So just hold down Alt or Option and click and drag to create a duplicate. And let's just continue on placing this around the edge of the subject. As you can see, you have to do a lot of fiddling about, adjusting the angle until you get something which looks satisfactory to you. So what I'll do, I think we can actually right click, warp, and just adjust the shape a bit more for this one. To something like this. And let's now just remove the excess. Create a layer mask for both of the lightning layers and then just go in with the black color and paint out the excess. Okay, so let's start off with this one. Let's just paint out with black to remove the excess. As you can see. Let's do the same now for the other one. Let's just paint this out of the face. Of course, we don't want this to be visible on the face. Let's zoom in and try and get this part accurate. Bring some of it back and try and get this nice and sharp. Yep. This looks good. Okay, now what we will do is the same thing on the other side. So what I'll do is just duplicate both of these layers, press Command or Control J, press Command or Control T, and then just drag them over. Then we can right click, flip horizontal, and just do the same thing. Okay, let's just remove this excess using the layer mask. Okay, and let's just remove any odd ends. Now, if you just want things not to be completely identical on both sides, what I would recommend is just using the warp tool. But first of all, let's just merge the first two together. So this whole strip on the left hand side, let's merge them together. So just select them both and press Command or Control E and just change the blending mode back to screen and do the same thing on this side. Command or Control E and change the blending mode back to screen. Let's just rename this to lightning left and lightning right. Always good to keep organized, guys. And what I'll do now is just play around with the warp. So what I'll do is start off on this right hand side this time, and let's just press Command or Control T, right click and warp. And let's just see if we can adjust the shape a slight bit so that things don't look completely identical or mirrored on the left hand side. And I can see there's some excess on the chin, so let's just remove that. So just create a layer mask for both of these lightning layers and let's just paint that out. Yep, nice. Okay. Just try and get a nice sharp edge here by using a small brush. Okay, not too bad, not too bad at all. Now at this stage, either you're happy with the result you have already, or you will just be slightly nitpicky and just go ahead and continue adjusting until you're completely satisfied. So I'll just go ahead and do that, but hopefully you understand the general concept. Place your lightning around the edges and you can use the warp tool to shape the lightning. So I'll be right back in just a moment. Okay, so I've made my adjustments. I just adjusted the levels a slight bit and I just refined the mask even further. And as you can see, I've just merged all the layers together, so lightning left and lightning right. Now let's move on to the next step, which is to enhance the glow effect on the thunder. And how I'll do this is simply by just first of all creating a new layer, and I'll actually place this at the very top, and I'm going to rename this to light or glow light. Okay, and what we are going to do now is press B for the brush tool, and we are going to use the color blue right here. Okay, you can use any shade of blue that you like. I'm going to use this one, and here is the hex code. And what we will do is simply now set the flow to 50, and I'll go in and change the blending mode to linear dodge add. Then let's just zoom in, and what we essentially have to do here is just paint over the lightning. Only go over it one time, and that should be enough. So have a soft rounded brush about this size, and let's just paint over. And as you can see, that adds a nice glow effect around the edges. Okay, perfect. Let's do the same on the other side. Zoom in. And let's just repeat the same process. I'm going to undo that. Let's try one more time, being a bit more accurate this time round. Okay, this is not too bad. Okay, let's just zoom out now, and I'm going to decrease the opacity down to about 50%, or let's make it 40. We want this to be subtle, guys, not too bright, but we definitely want a glow effect there. Okay, so this doesn't look too bad. I'll then create a layer mask, and now with the black color, set the flow to 20%. We are simply just going to fade this out so that we don't have this sort of sharp edge here. So just from a distance, paint out. You might not even see the difference that what I'm doing is making, but we just want to remove any harsh lines. As you can see here, if I just point with the cursor, or use the brush tool to illustrate this point, if you look very closely, you can see that there's this sort of sharp edge right here, and so I'm just trying to soften that edge. It's very subtle, so you might not see it, but it's there. Okay, so let's just click within the layer mask and do the same thing now on this side. Just faint out the glow a slight bit to remove any harsh edges. As you can see, okay, this is looking pretty good. Okay, and so this is before, and this is after. A nice little glow effect. Now we can adjust the opacity in just a moment. Let's keep it to 40 for now. And we are now going to do the same thing for the outer parts of the text. So I'll show you what I mean. So what we will do is just create a new layer. Let's rename this one to Glow Light 2. Or Glow Light Text. That's a bit more accurate. And what we will do now is select the text layer. So let's select our text layer, number 20. So press Command or Control and just click within the layer to make a selection of number 20. And we are now going to inverse this selection. So I'll press Command or Control Shift and I. And now that's just inverse the selection, meaning that I cannot paint within this selection, but rather on the outside. Let's then go back to our Glow Light text layer, press B for the brush tool, and with the same color that we used previously, setting the flow to 50%, and having the blending mode to linear dodge add, let's just paint over the edges of the text. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's just paint over the edges, around the edges, and look at this beautiful glow effect that's starting to appear. Let's do the same for number 2. I think we can do it better. Let's try one more time, following the shape very nicely. Okay, let's now press Command or Control D to deselect, and let's do the same thing for number 26. So make your selection of it by pressing Command or Control and clicking on the layer, and then just inverse this selection. So Command or Control Shift and I. And then in our glow light text layer, let's just go over the shapes as we did before. As you can see. Okay, looking good. Let's press Command or Control D to deselect, and as you can see, the text looks much more attractive in my opinion. Now of course we can adjust the color of this glow, and we can increase or decrease the intensity. It's completely up to us. So let's just adjust the opacity and see if we can make this a little more subtle. It's quite strong at the moment. We had about 40 opacity for the light around the subject. Let's put this to 40 and see how it looks. Okay, so this is before and this is after. I think we can actually increase the opacity to about 60%. Okay, so this is before and this is after. Looking really nice. Now you can also go ahead and adjust the color of these glows, but I'm going to keep it at this. I like the way it looks. Now what we've also got to do now at this stage is just add some thunder coming in from the top, and we want this to look as if there's lightning strikes hitting the subject from both sides. Let's select one of our lightning layers. Which one? Let's use lightning left. Let's press Command or Control J, and let's now press Command or Control T and just adjust the position of this. Okay, so let's say it's coming in from the top corner right here all the way down to the subject. Yep, looking good. Maybe we can bring this more over here, but I want it to be coming in from this corner. Yeah, so this is pretty good. And now what I'll do is press enter and create a layer mask, and let's just quickly rename this to top lightning left. And now within the layer mask, let's just paint out the excess. So I'll press B for the brush tool, and with the black color selected and the flow set to 100, we'll just paint out the excess. Nice and simple. Okay, looking good. I don't like this double lightning strike we have over here, so I just want to remove one of them. So let's try and do this carefully, in a good way. I think that's fairly decent. Yeah, not too bad. We've just removed one of the lightning strikes, and let's do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to press Command or Control J to duplicate that layer. Press Command or Control T, and let's just drag this duplicate over to the right hand side. Let's right click and flip horizontal and just do the same thing. Now if you want this to look a little bit more different, let's just flip it, and then the shape will be slightly different, just to avoid having the same shape on both sides. Again, we want things to look unique, so just adjusting the shape a slight bit helps us to create a new unique shape. Okay, this is looking pretty good. I don't like this little part that just sticks out right here. Let's remove that within the layer mask. Just click and remove it with the black color. As you can see, with Photoshop, you can pretty much adjust anything you want. That's the beauty of this program. Okay, looking really nice. Let's just zoom out. Yep, let's remove the excess here. Or maybe, yep, let's remove this excess right here. I don't like how it intersects. Yep, this is much better. And what I want to do now is just remove any parts of the lightning which is intersecting with the text, since we want the text to remain visible and look very clear and legible. So what we will do is let's start off with the one right here on the right. Let's just rename this one to top lightning right. And within the layer mask, let's now just paint out the parts which are overlapping with the text. So use the black color, make sure your flow is at 100, and let's just paint these parts out. As you can see, we want the text to be visible and we don't want anything overlapping it. Yep, so just remove this part as well. And let's do the same on the other side. Let's click on this layer. Yep, this one. And do the same thing. So just paint out any parts which are overlapping with the text. Yep, looking really nice. Yep, maybe we can adjust the position a slight bit. And just adjust the rotation. And let's now just adjust this mask. So remove this part. Let's bring some back since we removed it. So let's just bring these parts back for a moment. And then with the inverse color, let's just remove it once again. Of course, I don't want that extra part back in here, so let's remove that. And so you get the gist of this, guys. Yep, looking really nice. Yep, that looks good. Actually, I think I'm going to remove these ones right here intersecting within the text. I just want the thunder to come in from the top and come out on the bottom here. I don't want anything in between, it just doesn't look good. And these are decisions you're going to have to make when looking at your work. People judge things differently. In my case, I believe this is interfering with the legibility and actually doesn't look too appealing. So if I zoom out now, look how much better that looks. Yeah, much better. Let's do the same on this side, just to keep consistent. Just remove this part. Yep, looking really nice. Okay, so we've added glow effects to the lightning surrounding the subject. Now we just need to do the same thing for the lightning on both of these sides, right here and right here. So let's just stay on the same layer as before for the text, and I'm now going to press B for the brush tool, and the settings should stay the same, 50% flow. Let's just paint in over the thunder, just to add that neon light effect. Looking really nice. Let's do the same on this side, like so. Okay, looking really nice. Then if you just want to refine things, you can go in with the layer mask and press B for the brush tool, and with the black color we can just simply paint out parts we don't want or we would like to fade out. Yeah, but this is looking really nice. Really nice. Okay, perfect. Now since we have this misty background alongside the lightning, a perfect pair would be to add in some rain. That way it looks like he's in a thunderstorm and it just matches with the vibe of this thumbnail. So let's go ahead and add in some rain. So right here is the overlay we are going to be using. This is the image, and let's just drag this into our document. Let's click yes and make sure to scale it down first of all. So let's just right click, convert to smart object, and rename this to rain. Let's then press Command or Control T, and as you can see it's a large image, so let's just scale this down. Okay, scale it down to fit onto the dimensions of the canvas, as you can see. And then let's change the blending mode to screen. Yep, looking really nice. And once you've done that, let's just adjust the opacity down. We want this to be quite subtle and not overpowering in the background at all, but visible. Okay, so let's just keep it to 20 opacity for just a moment. That is subject to change. We can change that at any point. And now what I'll do is create a layer mask. And I'm now going to paint out the rain from the areas I don't want it to exist. So I don't want it to be on the subject because that decreases the clarity of the subject. So I'm just going to remove this from the subject's face and jersey. Let's put the flow to 100 so we can do this quicker. And on the jersey as well. Yep, Perfect. Okay, now I also want this not to be visible inside the text, so let's start off by painting out. Okay, so just painting within the text and removing any vein which exists within it. Nice and simple. Yep, so just making sure nothing exists within the text. As you can see, maybe we could remove these ones as well. Again, I just want things to be clear, and so if anything gets in the way of that, we need to remove it. So we're following basic design principles here, which is clarity. Clarity and legibility. Okay, doing the same thing on this side. So just removing. And let's just remove it from in here. I don't like how that looks. Maybe we can remove these as well. Okay, let's just zoom out and have a look. Yep, this looks really nice. And let's play around with the opacity and see if we can do something better. Okay, let's see if we can increase this a bit more. I think we can take this up to about 22 opacity. Let's keep it at that. Let's now add in some secondary text under 20 and 26. And this is an optional step, but I like to add it in just because of the aesthetic of it and because it adds a bit of context. So I'm going to be typing in the name of the subject, Erling Haaland, if you didn't already know. And so what I'll do is split it into two. We'll have Erling on the left-hand side and have Haaland on the right, and then we'll space out the text as well, just to make use of the space. Okay, so let's start off by pressing T for the type tool. Make sure we have the color set to white, and we are using the font Nexa Heavy. So I'm going to type in on this side, Erling, and then let's just make a duplicate layer. So press Option, click, and then hold down Shift to keep it on the same line, and I'll rename this side to Haaland. So the subject's name, adding some context. Now let's just scale both of these layers down, Command or Control T, and let's just scale these two down. And we want this to be relatively small, not too large, but readable. Okay, let's keep it to this for now, and we can adjust the size afterwards. Let's drag Erling to this side and Haaland to this side. Now again, like I mentioned, we are going to adjust the space, so what I'll do is just increase the kerning. Kerning just means the spacing between the letters. Okay, and so we want this to sort of be at the same width of these text layers above. Okay, so we are going to have it look like this. So I'll just show you with an example. So we want the text to follow these sort of guidelines right here above. Doesn't have to be completely accurate, but this is sort of our reference points as to how much we want to space out our text. Okay, so let me just undo that. And so let's just continue spacing out. Now, of course, the smaller the text, the more you can space things out. So let's just continue on. I'm just going to size this text layer right here first, and then we'll move on to this one afterwards. Okay, so I think that size is pretty good, and let's just increase the kerning. Yep, let's keep it to this. Yep, let's just do something like this. Okay, and then let's just have a look at the size of this font. So that's 34.71. And let's just input that same thing on this side. So 34.71. And let's just adjust the kerning as well. So the kerning is at 2380. So let's just do the same thing on this side. It's 2380. Okay, perfect. And then just position this as well. And in this scenario, as you can see, this is quite long. So what we can do is just decrease the spacing to, let's say, something like 2140. and just bring this one in a slight bit and adjust this one to 2140. So the objective here is really just to play with the space until you get something which looks visually appealing. So yeah, this is looking better. Yeah, this is looking good. Let's just zoom out. Maybe we can bring this text layer to the left a little bit more and just keep zooming out to have a bird's eye view. And keep adjusting until you get a good result. Looks really nice. Now what I'll do from here is just bring out the rulers, Command or Control R, and let's just make sure everything is on the same line, which you can see right here is not. These are not on the same line, so let's just remedy that very quickly. Perfect. Okay, looking really nice. Now they're on the same line, and now what I'll do is adjust the blending mode of both of these text layers. So highlight them both, and let's change the blending mode to soft light. Okay, looking really nice, and that sort of has a nice opacity effect to it, which merges in well with the background. Now what I would personally do is go back to our rain layer, press B for the brush tool, use the black color, and where the rain intersects with any of these letters, let's just remove the rain. Okay, right here, right there, right here, and right here. Okay, really nice. Let's zoom out, have a look. Yeah, this is looking really nice. At this stage, there's another optional step you can do just to enhance your text even further. What I will do is basically I'm just going to select both of these layers, Erling Haaland, right click and convert them both into a smart object. And as you can see, that just resetted the blending mode. So let's set that back to soft light. Okay, now what I'll do is create a new layer above, and I'll press Command or Control on the text layer. So select just to make a selection of the text. Then on the new layer we've just created, let's press B for the brush tool, and with a white color I'll simply just zoom in and add a slight highlight at the very top. So just a slight highlight on the very top, dragging across. So basically what I'm doing is clicking once, holding shift and just dragging like so. Okay, and we'll do the same on this side. Hold down and drag like so. Okay, let's press Command or Control D to deselect, and as you can see, that just adds a slight highlight to the top of the text. Now you can go ahead and just adjust the opacity a slight bit to maybe, let's say, 70%. So this is before and this is after. A slight adjustment to the text. You can even adjust the blending modes to see if you can get a better result with any of these modes. Let's try overlay and increase the opacity to 100. Okay, so this is before and this is after. Yep, overlay works better. It's a slight adjustment, but these are the little details which, if you can just adjust, will really elevate and boost your work. Okay, so before and after. If you can't see, I'll zoom in even further. Before and after. Okay guys, now we're not done yet. I'm still going to try and boost the attractiveness of this thumbnail, and I think if we add some lens flares, one right here, one right here, one right at the top and one right at the bottom, basically where the entry and exit points are of the lightning, we can really elevate the attractiveness of this thumbnail. So we'll be focusing on just placing them in these locations, 1, 2, 3 and 4. And so let's begin. So here is the lens flare I am going to use, and let's just drag this into our document. Click yes, and make sure to scale this down. As you can see, it's quite large, so let's just scale this down to an appropriate size. Okay, let's just keep it to something like this for the moment. And we need to change the blending mode now to screen in order to remove the background. So let's change the blending mode to screen. Let's now just remove the final parts of the background. As you can see, there's a border. We just want to remove that. We can do that by using levels. So Command or Control L, and just drag the shadows up, and that removes the background. So let's keep it to something like this. Click OK. And let's now just continue scaling down like so. We are going to place it right here. If you look carefully, we are just placing it at the exit point of the lightning. I think this looks really nice, and we can adjust the opacity down. We want this to be subtle and not overpowering in the thumbnail, because then it just looks tacky. So what I'll do is zoom out and have a bird's eye view. Let's just decrease the opacity to, I think 50% will do the trick. Yeah, very subtle, but it looks awesome. So this is before and this is after. So let's just duplicate those now and place them on these other points. So I'm going to press Command or Control J, press Command or Control T, and let's move this one over here. And we can maybe adjust the position to something like this. And let's do the other side. So let's press Command or Control J and just bring it over. I think we can place this one like this. And one last time, let's just create another duplicate and place it at the top here. At a bit of an angle. Let's just zoom out now. Yeah, this is looking really nice, guys. Really, really nice. Okay, so this is before and this is after. Now what I would do from here is just merge these all into one layer. So select all of them, press Command or Control E to merge them all into one layer, and then just change the blending mode back to screen. Then from here we can go in and just zoom in, create a layer mask, and we can remove any parts which are a bit excessive. So with the black color, set the flow to 100. We can just sort of paint out these edges right here so that they don't branch out too far. As you can see, they branch out quite far. So let's just make this a little more subtle on all of the points. Okay, and over here as well. Maybe we can leave this one to about here. Yeah, that looks much better. Much more refined. Okay, now we're moving on to the polishing process. This is sort of the final step before the actual final step, which is camera raw filter. And the objective here is simply to make some final polishes to make the thumbnail look its best. So what I'll do to do that is add in a manual vignette. So all that essentially is me just adding in some manual shadows onto this thumbnail, and we'll use the paintbrush to do that. Now we could go ahead and do that via camera raw filter, but in my opinion, we have a lot more freedom and flexibility when we use the brush tool to create our own vignette. So what I'll do is create a new layer. Let's rename this to vignette. Let's now press B for the brush tool and set the color to black. And by the way, guys, if you have any random color like red, for example, all you need to do on Photoshop is just press D, and that just resets the colors to black and white, the Photoshop's default colors. Okay, let's press B for the brush tool, make sure the color is set to black, and we are going to keep the flow to about 10% for this step. Make sure you also have a soft rounded brush, and let's now begin adding in some shadows. So what I'll do is increase the size of the brush, and we're just going to start adding in some shadows around the borders of this thumbnail. As you can see, just adding in some shadows like so, just adding in some darkness. Yep, looking good. I also want to darken these regions right here underneath the armpits, because if you see, the jersey is actually quite dark, so we want to emulate the sort of light that's going on in this region. So let's just add in some shadows right here, since they're bright, which they shouldn't be if the jersey right here is really dark. We should try to match the light. Let's paint some more at the top right here. So let's just add some more shadows in here and maybe here as well. Okay, let's just have a bird's eye view. This is before and this is after. Now this is the first step. Now what we need to do is just remove the shadows from the areas where we want the glow to exist. So what I'll do is press E for the eraser, and as you can see, if I just erase from these regions, it brightens once again. That's because our vignette actually darkened these areas, and so we just need to remove the shadows from the regions we want the glow to exist. So just paint over these regions, especially the regions where there is lightning. We want that lightning to shine through, as you can see. So just making sure none of those shadows are touching those areas. Also with this side, I think we can brighten this. And when I say brighten, all I'm really saying is just erasing the shadows from that area. Okay, right here as well. Actually, let's undo that. From here and from here. Really, really nice. And then from here, we just need to decrease the opacity to just remove the harshness of the shadows. So I think we can take this to about 80%. And so this is before and this is after. Let's just erase a bit more from here. And so spend as much time as you want on this step. Now the next phase is to add in a spotlight. So let's create a new layer, rename this to spotlight. And now what I'll do is press B for the brush tool, and we are going to use the color white. We'll keep the flow to 10%, and all I'm going to do is just lightly tap on the subject's face and just around the subject, just to brighten these regions. And we can remove this from underneath the armpits. Of course, we want the shadows to be there. And so this is before and this is after. So we've brightened the subject as a whole. Now I will decrease the opacity of this to about 40%, since we don't want this to be overpowering, but this is before and this is after. So we've just brightened things ever so slightly. And now for the final step, which is Camera Raw Filter. So let's just select the top layer. Let's now press Command, Option, Shift and E. And what that's going to do is just merge all the layers into one layer. Let's now go ahead and right click and convert this into a smart object. And then let's click on Filter and Camera Raw Filter. And let's now begin adjusting. So let's start off in the light section and increase the exposure. Let's take this to 0.20. So this is before and this is after. Yep, so we've just brightened the image. Let's increase the contrast. Let's take this to about 30 or maybe 25. Yep, so this is before and this is after. Yep, that does wonders. And let's now just adjust the highlights a slight bit. Let's just increase those. So let's take this up to +5 and let's increase the blacks a slight bit. So we'll take this to -5. Yep, perfect. Let's now go into color. Let's adjust the temperature. Yep, to maybe +4 or +3 actually. And let's increase the vibrance. So let's increase the vibrance to +10 and the saturation to +3. Okay, looking good. Let's now go into effects, increase the texture to +20. Let's increase the clarity to +5. And let's add some grain into the equation. So let's add about 12 grain. Yep, looking good. Let's now go into detail. Let's increase the sharpening to 30. So this is before and this is after. Yep, let's increase the sharpening to 30. And let's just increase the noise reduction a slight bit. So take it up to 5. Yeah, no more than that. Okay, so 5 noise reduction. Let's go into calibration and let's now just focus on the colors. So we're going to focus primarily on blue primary since all of these colors pretty much are blue. So let's just adjust the hues and see if we can come up with a better shade than what we already have. So I think we can take this up a slight bit. More into this sort of purplish tones. So yeah, this looks much better. So +8 on blue primary, and we'll keep the saturation maybe to +3. Yep. Looking really good. And then I'll go ahead and click OK. And there you have it, guys, a sports style thumbnail. Now the main objective of this style of thumbnail is really just to grab the attention of the viewer. If the person is interested in this particular player, then it's really just a matter of grabbing their attention. And if you can do that, they're going to click on the video. We've kept it simple with one subject in the middle at a large scale, so easily readable. And we have the text layers just to add context. So of course 2026, inferring that the video is of this person's performance in that year, and we have the actual name of the player underneath, all of which is adding visual context. Now if you've made it this far into the video, I commend you, and I'm sure you've learnt a lot in this video, especially regarding glow effects. Now I would also encourage you guys to try this out with multiple different people just to get a feel for the style and actually master the style itself. Remember, the more you practice a certain style and push yourself out of your comfort zone, the better you will get. And also try to add your unique twists to these thumbnail styles. With that being said, thank you very much guys for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.